I clearly remember the day I signed up for the army, fresh out of college, eager to serve my country. The discipline and structure of the military felt like the perfect fit for me, and over the years, I found meaning in my responsibilities. But with every deployment, I left parts of my personal life behind. After nearly 3 decades, I finally retired. Marcy and I had weathered many storms together, raising our children in the midst of the chaos. Despite thinking our bond was strong, adjusting to life outside the military turned out to be harder than I expected, and we began to drift apart. The warning signs were subtle, and I missed them, assuming we were secure in our routine. I soon realized that trust is a fragile thing. We lived in a cul-de-sac surrounded by modest homes. At our first neighborhood block party as empty nesters, Marcy and I met our neighbors. Our son Kyle was in college, and our daughter Rhonda had joined the Navy, which, as a retired Army colonel, didn't sit well with me. At the party, Marcy got stuck talking to Chuck, who lived across the street, and I could tell she wasn't enjoying it. She signaled for me to rescue her, but I was caught up chatting with Jenny, a fit single mum. When Marcy gave me a more urgent look, I finally brought Jenny over to Chuck, freeing Marcy, but she didn't seem impressed by how long it took me. As we left, we exchanged polite nods with the Nilons, a young couple. Their strange, almost secretive look toward each other caught my attention. My years in intelligence made me suspicious, but I shrugged it off, hoping for some pre-trip closeness with Marcy. Years of military service had strained our marriage. We had nearly split up during my time in Korea, but somehow we had managed to pull things back together. Deep down, though, I had always suspected that something had happened during that rough patch. Infidelity is common in military marriages, though no one likes to talk about it. Marcy and I had been fortunate to stay together, but I suspected she had been unfaithful while I was away. How did I know? A tip from my ex-girlfriend, who managed a hotel near Marcy's work, said she had seen Marcy at the Red Roof Inn. It raised enough questions for me to hire an investigator. It turned out, though, that Marcy's hospital was undergoing renovations, and she had parked there out of necessity. Still, her early morning arrivals at work stopped when I came home, leaving me with lingering doubts. My time in Korea had strained our family. A year apart had created a distance between us that I couldn't close, making me realize our marriage wasn't invincible. Although I never found out who the other man might have been, Marcy seemed dedicated to fixing things, and I was too. I eventually gave up flying, a passion of mine, and switched to Army intelligence to reduce the risks I was taking. Despite multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan after 9/11s, this new role gave Marcy some peace of mind. Still, I was concerned about our relationship and chose to retire rather than pursue a general's star, knowing another deployment could end our marriage. In retirement, my consulting job paid more than staying in the Army, and I was able to attend my children's graduations with Marcy by my side, which was priceless. Marcy, meanwhile, continued her nursing education and became the lead nurse on a brain surgery team. She worked closely with Dr. Trey Cardosa, a confident and skilled surgeon. I noticed how he looked at Marcy, and her constant praise of him made me uneasy. When I voiced my concerns, Marcy admitted that some harmless flirting at work helped relieve her stress, but she assured me it never went further. She reminded me of my close working relationship with Deirdre, a CIA colleague, before I deployed to Iraq. Deirdre had shown interest in me, but Marcy had trusted me, just as I needed to trust her. Our conversation didn't end well, and that tension hung over our lives. The truth was, Marcy had a reason to feel suspicious. After an ambush in Iraq, Deirdre made a move on me, and in a weak moment I almost gave in. We were interrupted before anything happened, and I convinced myself that it balanced the score for whatever Marcy might have done in Korea. But deep down, I knew I was just lying to myself. Now Marcy and her team were heading to South America for 6 weeks with Doctors Without Borders. I wasn't thrilled about her being around Dr. Trey, but I didn't want to stand in the way of her career, especially after all the support she had given me during mine. "I've stayed home for you plenty of times," she said. "Now it's your turn to wait for me." I couldn't argue with that. Things were tense when she left for the airport. She spent the night packing and talking with her mum, leaving little time for us. I didn't want to fight, so I let it go. The next morning, she was gone. No goodbye, no note. I checked for messages but found nothing. I was both annoyed and worried. After calming down with some coffee, I tracked her flight to Colombia and hoped she would call or text when she landed, but she didn't. I sent her a brief message. "I hope you're okay." "Interesting way to leave, Marcy." "It says a lot." No reply, not that day or the next. Usually, running helped clear my head, but my frustration drove me to push harder than usual. Out of breath, as I approached our cul-de-sac, Vincent Nealon called out to me. He lived behind us, and his wife Leslie was gardening. "Nice view, huh?" he joked, noticing where my eyes had wandered. I brushed it off, saying I needed a shower. He invited me over, even without Marcy, suggesting steaks and drinks. His wife smiled, and her subtle movements added to the strange atmosphere. I took the long way home, still preoccupied with Marcy's silence. After my shower, I sat in our empty house, waiting for a call that never came. By the time it was dark, I decided to call her hotel. I knew her itinerary and room number, but there was no answer. The hotel manager, Pablo Espinosa, confirmed that she had checked in, but his tone was guarded. He promised to check on her and have her call me, but something felt off. I scrolled through my contacts, searching for Marcy's close colleague, Penny Washington, hoping she might know more. Just then, my phone rang. It was Pablo from Bogota, not Marcy. "Hello, Pablo," I answered, my heart racing. "Any word about my wife?" "Senor, she wasn't in her room." "Maybe she's out with the other ladies," he said, his tone growing less polite. "Can you do me a favor, Pablo?" "Yes, Senor," he replied, though less cooperative than before. "What's Dr. Trey Cardosa's room number?" 514, Senor. "Do you want me to call him?" I cringed. Marcy's room was 515. "Not yet, Pablo." "One more thing." "Si, Senor, but I'm busy." "Please call Mrs. Penny Washington's room." After a pause, he agreed. I waited, anxious. Finally, Penny answered, probably tipped off by Pablo. "Hi, Penny," I said, trying to keep calm. "Sorry to bother you. Where's my wife?" Her voice grew irritated. "Why are you asking?" "Don't play games, Penny. Marcy's room is next to Trey's and she's not there. You know why I'm asking." "You should talk to your wife, Rick," she replied, but I heard a man's voice in the background, asking, "Who is that?" "Maybe I should have a conversation with your husband about the man in your room, Penny." "I have his number," I said firmly. She immediately responded, her tone pleading, "Please don't call him. This is the first time." "I don't care how many times it's been, Penny," I replied coldly. "Tell me where my wife is, or I'll call him right now." Reluctantly, Penny connected me to Trey's room. The phone rang, and Trey answered, assuming it was Penny. "Sorry to interrupt, Trey," I said icily, "but this is Rick Weston. I need to speak with my wife." He hesitated before trying to play dumb. "Why are you asking me, Rick?" "If you value your hands, put Marcy on the phone now." There was some shuffling on the other end before I finally heard Marcy's voice. "Give me the phone, Trey," she said firmly. "Rick, I didn't expect to have this conversation tonight." "What are you doing in his room, Marcy? Why didn't you respond to any of my messages?" "What do you think, Rick?" she shot back, her tone sharp. "I was having a good evening after a long, stressful day until you called." "Just tell me the truth. Are you and Trey having an affair?" I asked, my voice steady despite my anger. She paused, then told Trey to leave. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Rick, I've been a good wife and mother. I'll be home in 6 weeks, and we can talk then. But right now, let me have this just once." "If you don't mind," I replied, stunned. "You didn't even have the decency to talk to me before you left." "All that would have done is start a fight," she said, frustrated. "You think?" I replied sarcastically. "Maybe I would have asked you to stay." "I might have stayed," she admitted softly, "but I needed this just once, to feel alive. And Trey? He's just a distraction, Rick. I don't love him." "How convenient," I said bitterly. Then there was a knock at the door. "Marcy, I have to go," I told her. "I love you, Rick." "I love you too, Marcy, but I'm not sure I'm still in love with you." I hung up, feeling a mix of emotions. When I opened the door, Leslie was standing there alone, smiling. "Evening, Rick," she said casually. "Hello, Leslie," I replied, noting how stunning she looked. "Are you going to invite me?" and she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sure," I said, stepping aside. She handed me a bottle of red Moscato, my favorite. "I was hoping you could use some company," Leslie said. "Not sure how great I'll be, but I do have some questions," I responded. Ask away, she said, searching for wine glasses. As I poured the wine, I asked, "Where's Vincent?" "He's out playing cards with friends." "I see," I said, thinking back to how often I had left Marcy alone during my military career. "Marcy's in South America, right?" Leslie asked. "Heard from her?" "Funny you ask," I replied. "I was just talking to her when you knocked." "Oh, sorry, Rick." "Did I interrupt?" she asked. "No, we said what needed to be said," I replied, sensing she could tell I wasn't in the best mood. "Leslie, I think we need to talk." We locked eyes, both of us feeling the unspoken tension. Leslie pursed her lips and nodded. "Let's sit," I suggested, gesturing to the living room. She sat down, keeping a slight distance from me, and crossed her legs. "How much has Marcy told you?" she asked, flipping the question back to me. "I was hoping Marcy had talked to you before she left," I said. "Did she?" "No," Leslie replied. "I ended up playing phone tag with her, only to find out she's in South America with her doctor friend. Then she told me to talk to you, so let's stop with the games. What did you and Marcy plan before she left?" Leslie took a long sip of wine, clearly needing some courage. "Marcy and I ran into each other at the mall a while back, and we ended up having drinks at my place. I don't know where you and Vincent were, but we started talking, and I opened up about my marriage and my husband's interests." She paused, choosing her words carefully, so I waited patiently. "My husband likes to share me," she finally admitted. "Share you?" I asked, piecing together what she meant. "With other men?" "Yes," she confirmed. "I told Marcy because I wanted her to know. I thought maybe she'd let me pursue you." "How did Marcy take that?" I asked, surprised. At first she was shocked, but she listened. Later she agreed on the condition that it would only happen while she was out of the country. I scoffed, amazed by the situation. "So Marcy never talked to me about this?" "No," Leslie said, equally surprised. "She dropped that bombshell on me right before you came over. I only found out about her and Dr. Trey tonight." "I found out tonight too," I admitted. Leslie shook her head. "My husband and I have an open marriage, but we never go behind each other's backs." "So Vincent knows you're here?" I asked, seeking clarity. "Yes," she confirmed. "He knows I'm attracted to you and has no problem with it." "You've had other steady partners?" I inquired. "Just one, off and on for 2 years," she explained. "Mostly we meet men out of town for fun, and Vincent watches." "He watches?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, it's safer that way," she said casually. I shook my head in disbelief. "How long have you two been doing this?" 4 years, she replied, as if it were entirely normal. "And Marcy agreed to this arrangement?" I asked, still trying to comprehend. "Yes, but only while she's away," Leslie clarified. "Did she say anything about what she'd be doing while she's gone?" I pressed. "No," she admitted, "but I had a feeling she might be doing something similar. Maybe giving me permission to be with you eased her conscience." "I wish she had talked to me," I said, feeling the weight of my own missteps. Leslie then handed me an envelope. "Marcy left this for you before we do anything," she said, excusing herself to the restroom. The envelope was addressed simply, Rick. I took a deep breath and opened it. "Dear Rick, by now you know I'm breaking our vows with Trey. But before you judge me, remember Deirdre in the Middle East. I don't have proof, but I'm almost certain you slept with her. I studied interrogation techniques when I helped you with your army intelligence classes, and I noticed how you always looked away whenever I mentioned her. You're a terrible liar, Rick. When Trey first touched me, I didn't tell you. Maybe I should have. Just like I should have had affairs during those lonely years. When you were off playing soldier, I was tempted, especially when you were in Korea, but I stayed faithful. Then Deirdre visited me while you were in the Middle East, and her smugness confirmed my suspicions. I'm almost certain you were unfaithful. If I'm wrong, then I'm the first to cheat. But I doubt that's the case. So here's the deal while I'm gone. I'm not your wife, and you're not my husband. We both have a 6-week hall pass. If we still love each other when I return, we'll move forward. If not, we'll mourn what we once had. I'm making this choice of my own free will, Rick. I don't love Trey, but I'm attracted to him. He'll just be a memory if you still want me. You know the saying, if you love someone, let them go. I'll be back in 6 weeks, if you want to try again. meet me at the Ambassador Hotel near the airport. If not, don't bother coming to the airport, just walk away. Love always, Marcy. P.S. Leslie was supposed to get tested for STDs before tonight. Make sure she shows you the results. Trey and I were tested before we left, and I'll get tested again before I return. If we're going to rebuild trust, this will be our first step. After reading the letter, I looked over and saw Leslie standing by the kitchen island, refilling her glass. Are you okay? She asked. I will be, I replied. She nodded and returned with the wine bottle, sitting a little closer this time. After refilling my glass, she gazed at me with those soft eyes. So, Rick, what do we do now? Right now, nothing, I said firmly. You and Marcy planned this for 2 weeks, and I'm just finding out tonight. It sounds like she's been up to something for a while, right? I guess so, Leslie admitted, looking down, not used to someone resisting her charm. If I was single, maybe things would be different. But I don't like being played, especially by someone I've loved for most of my life, I continued. You said this was her way of easing her guilt. It's clear this was all arranged behind my back, even down to the wine. I don't appreciate being used. I understand how you feel, she said quietly. So I guess nothing's going to happen between us. Not tonight, I replied. I need some time to think before I make any decisions. So can we count on you joining us for dinner in a few days, she asked. I don't know, Leslie. I need to sort things out. We'll see. Okay, she said softly. Just know I'm here for you. Thanks, Leslie, I said. Good night and thanks for the wine. She took that as her cue to leave, and I couldn't help but watch her as she walked out. After she left, I reread Marcy's letter. It's amazing what you notice when you take the time to analyze. Marcy's tone dripped with venom when she mentioned Deirdre, even though she wasn't sure we had ever been together. Yet, just a few paragraphs later, she practically encouraged me to sleep with Leslie. The inconsistency didn't sit right with me. Yes, Deirdre and I had gotten close in the Middle East, but we never slept together. There was only one incident after surviving an ambush, and it wasn't planned like Marcy's affair with Trey or this arrangement with Leslie. At the time, I felt guilty, but I also suspected Marcy had been unfaithful, so I saw it as some twisted form of justice. I also found it strange that Marcy didn't want me to meet her at the airport. Was she worried I'd be angry? I had never given her any reason to think I'd be violent, and why meet at the hotel instead of coming home? Then it hit me, was she really that manipulative? Considering how she had orchestrated everything behind my back, the answer seemed obvious. But what was really going on here? I scanned the room, suddenly suspicious of being watched. Could there be a camera hidden in the smoke alarm? I decided to make a few calls, but not inside, just in case I was being monitored. Grabbing Marcy's itinerary, I stepped outside to the porch swing. Marcy knew I was a consultant, but she didn't know I was actually a senior security consultant for Acme Global, responsible for the safety of offices worldwide. I had connections I could rely on when needed. My first call was to Alan Williams, the top tech expert in my department. He picked up right away with his usual direct greeting. Williams. Alan, this is Rick, I said. How's everything going? Pretty good, boss, Alan replied. But I'm guessing you didn't call just for a chat. No, I didn't, I admitted. I need your expertise. I gave him a quick rundown of the situation and my suspicions. I'm sorry to hear that, Rick, Alan said sympathetically. Give me 45 minutes to grab my gear, and I'll be right over. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it, I said before hanging up. Next, I scrolled through my contacts and called Ernesto, my go-to guy in South America, based in Bogota, the same city where Marcy and Trey were staying. I trusted him completely. Hola, Senor Rick, came his cheerful voice on the other end. Ernesto, my friend, how are you? I asked warmly. Doing well, boss. Wasn't expecting your call today. What can I do for you? I gave him the same summary I had given Alan, filling him in on the details. Damn, he said, sounding genuinely sorry. You need eyes and ears on the ground, right? Yes, Ernesto, I confirmed, giving him the hotel details, room numbers, and the name of the hotel manager. Can you handle it? Absolutely. You want audio, video, and pictures? Yes, everything. And send me daily updates. Let me know if you need more funds. Got it. I'll get started right away and keep you posted. Thanks, Ernesto. I appreciate it. Give my best to your family. Will do. Talk soon. After the call, I forwarded him Marcy's itinerary. Not long after, Alan arrived with his equipment. In just 30 minutes, he found hidden wireless cameras in several rooms, mostly concealed in smoke detectors, along with a few microphones. Even our landline had been bugged. These don't have much range, Alan noted. There's probably a receiver nearby. We searched the house and eventually found a box with a laptop in the attic. It was locked, but Alan suspected it stored and uploaded data from the cameras and microphones. He discovered the equipment belonged to Smith Investigations, with an address and phone number conveniently labeled. What do you want me to do with this? Alan asked. Disable everything, I considered, but then changed my mind. Actually, just disable the camera and mic in my office. Leave the rest. Let them watch. I'll make it boring. Alan chuckled and removed the devices from my office. He then checked the shared computer Marcy and I used and found a keylogger and spyware, which he quickly removed. Why do you think she did all this? I asked. Probably setting you up for something. Maybe a divorce, Alan suggested, confirming my suspicions. Yeah, you're probably right, I agreed. One more suggestion, Alan added. If the investigator installed all this, he might still have a key. You should change the locks and security codes. Good idea. I'll call a locksmith right away. Thanks for everything, Alan. After he left, I called a locksmith to change the locks and security codes. I didn't want any unexpected visitors. While waiting, I logged into Marcy's account on our shared computer, curious about her recent activity. Her email opened without needing a password. She'd saved her credentials and never updated them, as I'd suggested. For once, I was thankful she hadn't listened to me. Normally, I respected her privacy, but this situation was different. I sifted through her emails, quickly finding several exchanges between her and Trey, the doctor she was involved with in Bogota. Rather than go through them all right away, I exported and saved them onto a thumb drive for later review. There were also some emails with our kids, but nothing out of the ordinary. When the locksmith arrived, I showed him the doors that needed new locks and returned to the computer. One email thread between Marcy and Trey caught my attention because of its subject line lawyer. In it, Marcy mentioned that she had consulted her lawyer, reviewed the proposed divorce settlement, and decided to move forward, despite her lawyer advising against it. Trey appeared surprised, questioning her decision since she had claimed to love me and intended to stay with me. Marcy's response was chilling. She planned to stay with me, but only on her terms. She even admitted that I had unknowingly been her cuck for years. She outlined her plan to hand me divorce papers at the Ambassador Hotel upon her return and pressure me into signing a postnuptial agreement. If I refused, she would use evidence of my supposed affair with Leslie to ruin me financially. She even mentioned the possibility of suing Leslie for alienation of affection, further tightening her control over the situation. Trey expressed concern about the risks, but Marcy seemed confident that she had everything under control. She also admitted to having cheated on me for years, starting back when I was stationed in Korea. I printed out the email thread for safekeeping. By then, the locksmith had finished, so I paid him, tipping him for coming out after hours. I shut down the computer, grabbed a burger and a beer, and picked up some cigars to calm my nerves. On the way home, I noticed a dark SUV following me. It was likely the private investigator Marcy had hired. I tried to lose him, but he stayed on my tail. When I pulled into Jan's bar and grill, so did he. Frustrated, I got out, walked up to his SUV, and yanked the door open, startling the driver. "Who the hell are you? And why are you following me?" I demanded. I don't know what you're talking about," the man stammered. "That's crap," I said. "You've been tailing me since I left my house. Are you the pie my wife hired?" "I don't know what you mean," he muttered nervously. "You're lying," I told him, my patience wearing thin. "I'm done with liars. Maybe I should teach you a lesson. What do you think?" "Please, don't hit me. I'll leave," he pleaded. "Don't let me see you near me again." "Got it?" I warned. "Got it." "I'm sorry," he muttered before speeding off. After he left, I went inside, ordered a burger and a beer, and sat at the bar. "Trouble?" the bartender asked, noticing my mood. "Yeah, you could say that," I replied. "Can't live with them, can't shoot them," he joked, making me chuckle. I finished my meal, grabbed another beer from the fridge when I got home and went outside for a cigar. As I smoked, a plan started to form in my mind. I searched Google, checked my calendar, and picked a date. I'd need to make a few calls to get things in motion. Just then, I got a text from Ernesto. All set. First update in the morning. Please send $250 for expenses. I quickly transferred the money through PayPal and replied, thanks. Talk tomorrow. After finishing my cigar, I went upstairs and, curious, opened Marcy's nightstand drawer. Her rings were there. I took off my wedding band and placed it next to hers. Then, knowing there was a hidden camera in the smoke detector, I looked up and flipped it off. The next morning, I checked Marcy's email again and found a new message titled "Bin." The email detailed how I had discovered the surveillance equipment and the investigator following me. I marked it as unread and logged out. After work, I reviewed the footage Ernesto had sent of Marcy and Trey. It wasn't impressive, but one part stood out. Marcy told Trey, "He's probably with that girl next door. I'll have video of it tomorrow for my lawyer." I stopped the video and called Ernesto. "Sinner Rick, thanks for the money. Did you see the footage?" "I did, Ernesto. Listen, I have a plan I want to discuss with you." I laid out my idea, and he agreed it could be done in 10 days. "Why 10 days?" he asked. "That's our 25th wedding anniversary. I want to make sure she never forgets it." "You're one tough hombre, Senor Rick," he laughed. After ending the call, I scrolled through my contacts and found Deirdre's number. I hadn't spoken to her since our time in the Middle East. I dialed, and to my surprise, she answered. "Rick Weston. It's been forever," she exclaimed. I gave her a quick rundown of the situation. She listened in shock, and when I read her Marcy's letter, she responded angrily, "That lying witch. I never said anything like that. We were just a team, watching each other's backs. But thanks, Deirdre. I regret what happened between us, but none of that justifies what Marcy is doing now." "Rick, you have nothing to apologize for. We were under a lot of pressure, and I don't regret it. So, what's your next move?" I told her my plan and waited for her response. After a moment, she replied, "I like it. I really like it. I have someone in Colombia who can handle part of it, but I might be able to help with the rest." "When do you need this done?" she asked. "In 10 days, on our 25th anniversary." "Oh, you're wicked," she laughed. "Consider it my anniversary gift to you." We both chuckled. Then she added, "You know, I've thought about you a lot since the war in the Middle East." "I've thought about you too," I admitted. "We made a great team. I haven't connected with anyone like that since." "That's a shame," she said with a hint of sadness. "I'm thinking about retiring. They've got me pushing papers now." "If you retire, I know a place that would hire you," I suggested. "Would I be working with a certain retired army colonel?" she asked, a playful tone returning to her voice. "Definitely," I confirmed. "Well, that's something to look forward to," she said. Then, more seriously, she asked, "Rick, do you think we could reconnect?" "Yes," I answered honestly. "Marcy's made her choices, and I'm not going back to her." "Good," she said with relief. "Because I'd like to finish what we started in the Middle East." "I'd like that too," I agreed, "but I need to take care of a few things first." "I understand," she said. "Just don't make me wait too long." "I won't," I promised. "But the divorce will take some time." "I get it," she replied. "Just know I'm here if you need someone to talk to." "It's great hearing your voice again," I told her sincerely. "Yours too," she replied warmly. "But my dinner's getting cold, so I'll talk to you soon." "Promise," I teased. "You'd better believe it," she joked. After we ended the call, I felt better than I had in a long time. Knowing Deirdre still cared meant a lot. I was brought back to reality by a knock at the back door. It was Leslie, holding a plate of lasagna. "I thought you might be hungry," she said. "Mind if I come in?" "Just put it on the counter," I replied. She smiled and set the plate down. "I hope you like it, or maybe you'd prefer something else." I was tempted but decided against it. My conversation with Deirdre had reminded me of what truly mattered. "As tempting as that sounds, I'll have to pass," I said, noticing the concern cross Leslie's face. "What's wrong?" Marcy gave you a hall pass, she said, puzzled. I do find you attractive, but there's a camera right there, I said, pointing toward the smoke detector. Why don't you wave hello? Her expression shifted to shock as she looked up at the detector. Are you serious? Yes, I confirmed. She installed cameras all over the house, and she hired a spy. Who knows, maybe he's watching you too. She shook her head, clearly disturbed. I had no idea. Come to my office, I suggested. Once there, I handed her a printout of the emails between Marcy and Trey. As she read them, her eyes widened in disbelief. Oh my God, I didn't know. Rick, I swear, she said, horrified. I believe you, I assured her. She played both of us. What are you going to do, she asked, concerned. I'm filing for divorce. I won't be with anyone until it's finalized, I replied. Can we still be friends, she asked hopefully. Of course, I said, keeping it simple. Okay, Rick, she sighed. I'm sorry about everything. Enjoy the lasagna. Thanks, Leslie, I responded. I escorted her to the back door, watching as she left. She looked good in those shorts, but I wasn't going to risk everything. After she left, I changed into my running gear, figuring the lasagna would still be warm when I returned. After a run and a quick shower, I sat down to eat. The lasagna was packed with cheese, mushrooms, and meat, just how I liked it. It hit the spot. I cleaned my plate, grabbed a beer, and headed to my office. Before I settled in, I flipped off the camera in the front room. I started by checking Marcy's email. She had responded to the investigator, telling him to back off for now. Nothing else was noteworthy. I then took a look at her finances. We had 3 accounts, hers, mine, and a shared household one. She had saved a decent amount of money, but had also paid a hefty retainer to attorney Alison Hargraves and a significant sum to Smith Investigations. Some Victoria's Secret charges stood out as well, things I'd never seen her wear. Curious about Hargraves, I did a quick search. She was a family law attorney and an author known for promoting female-led marriages. Her book had sparked some controversy, pushing ideas like the hot wife and cuckold lifestyles. I bought the cheapest Kindle version and skimmed through it while sitting on the patio with a beer and cigar. Her disdain for men was obvious, and I couldn't believe Marcy had chosen her as an attorney. It said a lot. As I was reading, my phone buzzed. Ernesto had texted, saying he could arrange what I needed, but it would cost $1,000. I decided to transfer the money directly from Marcy's account so any trace would lead back to her. I confirmed the transfer with Ernesto. The next few days flew by. My routine consisted of checking updates from Ernesto, reading Marcy's emails, going to work, running, eating and relaxing with a beer, cigar and TV before bed. I didn't care that Marcy hadn't called or texted. I was enjoying the peace, as whatever feelings I had for her were long gone. I saw Leslie once more after I returned her plate. Vince invited me to dinner, but I declined, claiming I had things to do. He seemed disappointed, but I was relieved that Leslie stayed away. I didn't need any more distractions. The highlight of my days was talking to Deirdre. We chatted every couple of days, discussing everything from life to dreams, even my kids. The more we talked, the closer I felt to her, and I realized I was falling for her again. Eventually, I scheduled a meeting with Alison Hargraves. Her receptionist greeted me with coffee, and when I introduced myself, Alison, well-dressed and about my age, shook my hand. I couldn't help but notice the ring on her finger and wondered what kind of life her husband led. So, you're considering a divorce? Alison asked. Yes, I replied. And your name is Weston, she confirmed while checking her computer. That's right. She frowned slightly. What's your wife's name? Marcy, short for Marcia. Well, Mr. Weston, I can't represent you due to a conflict of interest. I'm already representing your wife. I figured as much, I said, unfazed. I also know you only represent women. Seems a bit sexist to me. She stared at me. If you knew that, why did you come to see me? As a retired Army intelligence officer, I like to understand my enemy. Enemy? Is that how you see me? Pretty much. I read your book and your interview in the New York Times. You recruit your clients into your lifestyle, right? Is that what you did with my wife? That's privileged information, she replied coolly. Of course. Did you know Marcy was going to Colombia and what she planned to do? That's also privileged information, she said firmly. I nodded. I noticed you're married. Your chapter on controlling husbands was interesting. Do you treat your husband the way you suggest in your book, humiliating and controlling him? That's none of your business, Mr. Weston. I think this meeting is over. I smiled as I stood. I'd like to say it was a pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Hargraves, but that would be a lie. I'm sure we'll meet again. As I left, I added, by the way, I found your book disgusting. Have a good day. The receptionist gave me a knowing smile as I walked out, probably having overheard our conversation. Finally, the day of our 25th wedding anniversary arrived. I had taken the day off, knowing it would be a busy one. Early that morning, Deirdre texted, confirming that everything was set. Later, I received a message from Ernesto, check your email. I opened the video he'd sent. It showed a dirt road with a makeshift checkpoint. 3 SUVs approached, and armed soldiers stopped them. They searched the vehicles and found something significant, which led to more soldiers arriving. Trey and Marcy were pulled from their SUV, handcuffed, and taken away. A tow truck hauled their vehicle off, and the other cars were eventually allowed through. Shocked, I immediately called Ernesto. I saw the video, Ernesto. What happened? We planted the stuff as planned, just a small amount. But it turns out Trey was smuggling large quantities of powder. My men saw the pills being loaded and backed off to avoid cartel involvement. Good call. Where are Marcy and Trey now? They're both in jail. Marcy might have known about the pills, but it's unclear how much she was involved. They have 48 hours to present the case to a judge, and the investigation could take up to 90 days, but I doubt it'll take that long. So the consulate knows by now. They should. Ernesto confirmed. I'll keep you updated. Thanks, Ernesto. It's not what I expected, but if Marcy's involved in trafficking, she deserves what she gets. After the call, I contacted Deirdre to fill her in. She wasn't too surprised and offered to reach out to her contacts in Colombia for more information. I'll let you know as soon as I hear anything, she assured me. While waiting for more updates, I grabbed a trash bag and went through the house, removing all the cameras and microphones that Marcy's Pie had planted. I also grabbed the surveillance equipment from the attic, tossed it all into a trash bag, and placed it in the driveway. Then I called Smith Investigations. Smith Investigations, a woman answered. I want to speak to the boss, I demanded. Okay, sir. One moment, she stammered, clearly caught off guard. A few seconds later, I heard a familiar voice, the man I'd confronted at Jan's. James Smith, how can I help you? This is Rick Weston. Remember me, I said, keeping my tone firm. Your client is now in a Colombian jail for trafficking pills. I've removed all your surveillance gear from my house, and it's in a trash bag on my driveway. If it's still there tomorrow, it's going in the trash. Yes, sir, he replied quickly, his voice tight with tension. I hung up without bothering to hear more. The next morning, the bag was gone. I assumed Smith had collected it, but it didn't matter to me anymore. Not long after, Deirdre called. She got straight to the point. I just spoke with the station chief in Bogota. What did you find out? I asked. The Colombian authorities have been watching Trey since he arrived. He's linked to a major pill cartel. If Marcy's involved, she could be looking at a long prison sentence. The judge handling the case is strict on foreigners. How long are we talking? I asked, feeling the gravity of the situation. At least 10 years, she replied. Well, if she's guilty, that's what she deserves. How much did they get caught with? I asked, the weight of it sinking in. About 20 pounds of white powder and flea powder, she informed me. Damn, I muttered. Expect a visit from the State Department soon, Deirdre warned. Let me know how it goes. Will do. Thanks, I replied, ending the call. Afterward, I contacted the hotel in Bogota. When Pablo, the manager, answered, I asked to be connected to Penny Washington's room. Penny answered, her voice shaky. Penny, it's Rick Weston. Do you know where Marcy is? It's our anniversary, and I wanted to reach her. Is she out with Trey? No, Rick, Penny replied, her voice trembling. Marcy and Trey were arrested at a checkpoint for trafficking. The soldiers took them away. We were questioned and told to stay at the hotel. It's like house arrest. Have you told Josh yet? I asked pointedly. No, she admitted quietly. Penny, I'm going to tell him soon, I informed her. Please, Rick, don't tell him, it'll destroy him, she pleaded. Not as much as your cheating will, I shot back. He deserves to know. I ended the call and immediately reached out to Josh, giving him the full story and offering to send the video evidence of Penny's affair. Thanks for telling me, Rick. This will be the last time she cheats on me, Josh said. I sent him the videos and then scheduled a meeting with a divorce lawyer in 3 days. A couple of days later, my boss, Bill Hastings, called me into his office. A man from the State Department, Thomas Herman, was there. Rick, your wife Marsha has been arrested in Colombia for trafficking pills, Thomas said. We can monitor the situation, but we can't interfere with local laws. She's also been placed on a no-fly list, so even if she's released, she can't return to the US. How much time is she facing? I asked. Up to 12 years, Thomas replied. After 7 or 8, she might be eligible for conditional release, but she won't be able to leave Colombia. He handed me a pamphlet explaining how to send her money for legal fees and other expenses and offered to help arrange visitation. I told him I'd think about it and be in touch. After Thomas left, Bill closed the door. Rick, this could affect your security clearance and your job. Take some time off and get this sorted out. I will, Bill. Thanks. Back home, I sifted through Marcy's emails for anything else incriminating. I found a conversation from 3 months before their trip where Trey asked if she wanted to make extra money in Colombia. After some hesitation, she agreed. Trey responded, "Good girl. Trust me, you'll be glad you did." I printed the email chain, saved it as a PDF, and added it to the thumb drive with the rest of the evidence. Then, I reviewed the video recordings, skipping the physical parts. One conversation from the day before they were caught my attention. "You ready? Tomorrow's the big day," Trey asked. "I think so," Marcy replied, her voice uneasy. "Good. The product will be in our vehicle tomorrow morning, in boxes marked as medicine. We won't even have to touch it." "And you're sure we won't get caught?" Marcy asked nervously. "I've been on that road plenty of times. No checkpoints. If this works, we can do it again and retire with the money." "Sounds good to me," she said. Bingo! I saved the video and added it to the thumb drive. Then, I emailed the kids to arrange a Skype call for the next evening. Afterward, I called Ernesto to update him. "Damn, what's your plan?" he asked. "I'm going through the evidence. I've got a lawyer appointment tomorrow, and I'll deliver the divorce papers myself." "You're coming here?" he asked. "Yes, and I'll hand the evidence to the prosecutor too." "You can stay with me and my family," Ernesto offered. "Thanks, Ernesto. I'm looking forward to Lupe's cooking," I joked. We both laughed, and I promised to call when I was ready to fly down. After that, I drained Marcy's account and sent the money through Western Union for her legal fees. Then, I packed her belongings into trash bags, including our wedding album, and stuffed them into her car. I called her parents, informing them about the divorce and Marcy's situation. They were heartbroken but agreed to pick up her things. When I told them about the trafficking charges, they were shocked. "Are you sure Marcy's involved in this?" her father asked. "Yes, I have evidence, which I'll be giving to the prosecutor," I replied. They arrived later, took her car and belongings, and expressed their sadness. "Please stay in touch," Rick, her mother said, hugging me. "I will," I promised. After they left, I grabbed a beer and a cigar, sitting on the porch to unwind. Deirdre called to check on me. "Hey, how are you holding up?" she asked. "I've been better, but hearing from you lifts my spirits," I said. We chatted, and I shared an idea with her. After a pause, she responded, "That's the best idea I've heard in a long time. Let's do it." We ended the call on a positive note, and I felt a sense of relief. The next day, I met with my attorney, Lisa Hawkins. She was confident and professional, a stark contrast to Marcy's lawyer. I provided her with all the evidence and explained Marcy's charges in Colombia. "That should make things easier for us," Lisa said. "What do you want out of this?" "Everything, except her 401k, clothes and car. I've already sent most of her money for her expenses." "That's doable. How do you plan to serve her?" "I'll deliver the papers myself," I said. Okay, I'll have them ready in 2 days. We briefly discussed the possibility of going after Trey or her lawyer, but Lisa advised against it, noting that such cases rarely succeed. I agreed, paid the retainer, and left. Later, I connected with the kids over Skype to break the news. "What's going on?" Dad Kyle asked. "I have something important to tell you. Your mother and I are getting divorced." Both of them looked stunned. "Why?" Dad Kyle asked, sounding confused. "Did something happen?" I explained briefly and told them their mother was in a Colombian jail for trafficking pills. "Are you sure she's involved?" Rhonda asked. "Yes, I have proof. I'll be giving it to the prosecutor," I replied. "You're helping send her to prison?" Kyle asked, incredulously. "She broke the law, son. I can't ignore that. We've talked before about how dangerous this stuff is." "I know," Kyle said softly. "It's just so messed up." "It is, but your mum made her choice, and she got caught." We talked for a while longer, and I answered all their questions. It was a difficult conversation, but by the end they understood what their mother had done and why I needed to take these steps. I promised to send them the address where they could write to her, and we ended the call with a tearful goodbye. Afterward, I contacted Tom to arrange the visitation for the day after I received the divorce papers. He agreed to set it up, and we hung up. Then, I updated Ernesto about my plans. "Do you know who's prosecuting the case?" I asked. "Yes, Ricardo Montoya. He's tough," Ernesto replied. "Good. I'll bring him some evidence when I arrive." We ended the call, and my final one was to Deirdre. She listened patiently as I filled her in, and by the time we were done talking, I felt much better. 2 days later, Lisa informed me that the papers had been filed and were ready for Marcy's signature. With my bags packed and tickets in hand, I grabbed my passport, picked up the divorce papers, and headed to the airport. After letting Ernesto know I was en route, I got a message from Tom confirming the visitation details. Ernesto met me after I cleared customs, and we gathered my luggage before heading out. "Where to first?" he asked. "To see Senor Montoya," I replied. At the government building, Ernesto parked, and I headed inside. A receptionist stopped me, but before I could say much, a well-dressed man appeared. "I'm Senor Montoya," he introduced himself. "Rick Weston," I replied, shaking his hand. "I believe you're handling the case against my wife, Marcy." He invited me into his office. "What information do you have for me?" I handed him a thumb drive. This has videos of her and Trey discussing smuggling pills, along with email exchanges. I've also included her email credentials in case you need to investigate further. Montoya studied me. "You realize my job is to ensure she spends a long time in prison, correct?" "I understand." "So why are you giving me this evidence? Shouldn't you be helping her defense?" When I didn't respond immediately, he continued, She was involved with Dr. Cardosa, wasn't she?" "Yes," I admitted. "I see. You're seeking revenge." "No," I said firmly. "I'm a retired Army intelligence officer. I can't overlook the law, not even for my soon-to-be ex-wife. I'm also here to serve her divorce papers. Use the evidence however you see fit." Montoya nodded. "Very well, Senor Weston. I'll review your evidence. How long will you be in Bogota?" "Just a day or two. Enough time to serve the papers and head back to the States." "Welcome to Bogota," he said, shaking my hand. When I got back to the car, Ernesto asked, "How'd it go?" "You were right, Montoya is tough," I replied. Ernesto laughed. "You have no idea. Let's head home. Lupe's been cooking all day." At his place, Ernesto set me up in a guest room, and I met his wife Lupe and their kids. We enjoyed a wonderful dinner, and afterward, Ernesto and I sat outside, smoking cigars and sipping aguardiente, a fiery drink that lived up to its name. We chatted casually before heading to bed. The next morning, Ernesto drove me to the prison where Marcy was being held. The conditions were harsh, noisy, crowded, and reeking of filth. Inside, we were taken to a small room where Marcy waited, looking thin and drained. She was shackled to the table. I sat across from her, opened my briefcase, and set the divorce papers on the table. "You once gave me a choice. Marcy, either take you back or walk away. You know what I've chosen." Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Rick. I never wanted to hurt you." "Nonsense," I replied coldly. "You conspired with Leslie, saw Alison Hargraves, and tried to set me up." "You lied about everything," I said coldly. "I came here for one reason: sign these papers, and we're done." "I don't want a divorce," Marcy protested. "It's too late. You plan to either make me your puppet or destroy me. Face it, we're over. Sign the papers." Reluctantly, Marcy picked up the pen and signed where indicated, with the embassy official witnessing our signatures. Once it was done, I tucked the papers away. "By the way," I added, "I saw you prepaid for the Ambassador Hotel. Since you won't need it, I'll be using that reservation." "Go ahead," she muttered. "And just so you know, I plan to invite Deirdre. We'll finish what we started in the Middle East just once, if you don't mind." She glared at me furiously, but I shook my head. "After everything you've done, don't even try. As far as I'm concerned, we're no longer married. Enjoy your miserable life." I stood and walked away, leaving her sobbing at the table. Outside, I noticed Montoya by his car. He approached, shook hands with the embassy official, and turned to me. "If you don't mind, I'd like to speak with Colonel Weston privately," he said. The embassy official nodded and left. Montoya placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Walk with me, Colonel." "Please, call me Rick. I'm no longer a colonel," I replied. He smiled. "And you may call me Ricardo. Once a military man, always a military man, right?" "Ernesto speaks highly of you," I said. "He's told me a lot of good things." "You know Ernesto?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, we served in the army together. When he joined Acme Global, I became a prosecutor," he explained. "I reviewed your evidence. It's solid and will save us significant time and resources. That's why I've decided not to charge you with conspiracy," he said. I was taken aback. "Don't be too surprised," Montoya continued. "Ernesto told me about your plan. If your wife had been caught with just a small amount, she might have been fined and deported. But thanks to Ernesto, nothing illegal was purchased, and the money you sent went to a charity for widows and orphans. They appreciate your donation." I couldn't help but smile. "Your cooperation and record convinced me not to press charges. But if you ever attempt something like this again, I won't hesitate to take action," he warned. "I understand, Ricardo. Thank you." "No, thank you. The information you provided will be instrumental. Justice is coming for your wife and Dr. Cardosa." "I'm heading back to the States," I told him. "If you ever return to Bogota, perhaps we could have dinner," he suggested. "I'd like that." Ricardo, we shook hands. "Adios, Rick," he said with a smile. "Adios, Ricardo, and thank you." I returned to Ernesto's car, where he asked, "Everything go okay?" "Yes, Ernesto, all good. But I need to get to the airport." On the way, Ernesto apologized for not following my original instructions. "Don't apologize," I said. "You did the right thing. I'm the one who should apologize for putting you in that position." "Don't sweat it, boss. I understood why you did it. If it were me, I might have gone further. But it all worked out." "Yes, it did. Thanks for everything, Ernesto. I'll keep in touch. Send my best to Lupe and the kids." We shook hands. "Where?" "Take care, boss. Come back anytime for more bandeja paisa," he joked. Deirdre met me at the Ambassador Hotel on the very day I was supposed to meet Marcy. We picked up where we had left off in the Middle East, and it was a night neither of us would forget. As we lay in bed afterward, she said, "I've submitted my retirement papers. I'm considering a career change." "Oh," I asked, curious. "What do you have in mind?" "Becoming a full-time wife and homemaker," she said, grinning. "Think there's an opening for that." I looked at her and teased, "I think a position might open up soon. Want to apply?" "I already did," she laughed. "And you know, Rick, I've fallen in love with you." "I've fallen for you too," I replied warmly. "So, shall we make it official?" she asked, despite my divorce not being finalized yet. "Why not? Will you marry me?" I asked. She kissed me deeply. "Yes, Rick. I love you so much." As for Marcy and Trey, they were convicted of pill trafficking in Colombia and sentenced to 12 years in prison with heavy fines. Trey ended up in a brutal prison and didn't last long. Rival cartel members got to him. Marcy fared somewhat better in a women's prison but still had a tough time. She receives occasional visits from the embassy, but few others. The kids write to her, but they're hesitant about seeing her again. Penny and the others were released after the trial, but Penny went through a harsh divorce and lost her job. I lost touch with Les and Vince, but I heard they continued their lifestyle. Leslie had to take a break after getting pregnant, paternity uncertain. After Deirdre and I got married, we sold the house and bought a new one. She settled into her role as a homemaker, and though I've offered her a job at Acme, she prefers to focus on building a happy home for us and for her cat, which I don't mind one bit.